Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of A to Z on CFB Podcast, where we go over all things college football. With a few short weeks until the season begins, there's a lot of things to go over. And one of those things that we're going to be going over today is each conference and who I think their winners are going to be. But before we get into that, I wanted to thank you guys for checking out the channel. And I want to remind you that to also go check out the TikTok page, A to Z CFB, with the same logo as this. And if you really want to go enjoy some college football content, post there pretty much every day, and working on growing both. That being said, without any more stalling, let's get into it. So, predicting the winners of each conference. Firstly, the Sun Belt. That's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the Sun Belt, and we're going to work our way through the group of five teams, and then we're going to get ourselves down to the Power Four conferences. Uh, that being said, the Sun Belt, I think that Southern Miss, the Golden Eagles, they're going to win it this year. It is a little bit of the easier answer, I think, in this where this is essentially the Marshall team that won it last year. They decided pretty inexplicably to not rehire Charles Huff, and I just think that I don't understand where the thought process there was because it seems like he hasn't missed a beat. It seems like he has pretty much just continued his recruiting as normal, and he has taken this very talented recruiting class, very talented Marshall roster to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where he is going to, I think, win the entire conference, to the entire Sun Belt. Moving on to the American, no longer the AAC, just the American Conference, where I believe the Tulane Green Wave are going to win the conference. Jake Retzlaff or Caden Samanza, it doesn't really matter to me who I believe is going to win this conference. I think that both are talented quarterbacks, but I think that around them is also just a very talented team. And I think that whoever they go up against, they're going to be able to trump them, including the academies, which seem to be the biggest threats right now. It looks like Navy is going to be a relative powerhouse in the American, and Army is, with Jeff Monken still, and you know, obviously building from it within, is also going to be a very talented program. But I think that Tulane has just spent too much money and has too talented of a roster to lose in this conference. Next up, the Mountain West. I believe that Boise State is going to win this. This is kind of, I'm going to keep running with Boise State. They seem to be the preseason favorite every year, but they also seem to win it most years. It's kind of the boring answer, but they did a really good job reloading their talent. They're keeping their quarterback, Maddox Medicine, and they are going to, and even without Ashton Jeanty, they still have one of the more talented offensive lines in the country. So I think they're going to be able to operate a pretty solid team, despite the fact that they are just a year removed from their should have been Heisman winning running back. I also just really believe that Spencer Danielson is going to be get the most out of his team more than I kind of believe that in let's say in like a UNLV who just lost Barry Odom and is dealing with a new head coach this season. The MAC. The MAC is next, the Mid-American Conference. I believe that Toledo is going to win this team. And I think the thing that separates Toledo more than anything on compared to the rest of the other top teams on the MAC is just the experience of head coach Jason Candle. I think, bringing Gleason back is definitely, a really, really good thing for them. They brought back a lot of their receiving talent despite missing Jerjon Newton to the NFL draft. I do think that uh, one thing that I'm really counting on in this prediction is that Jason Candle gets the most out of his talent that he's brought in. He brought in two running backs as well as his back two running backs from the transfer portal who have been pretty highly touted in their respective teams or, were at least on bigger programs beforehand. And I think this defense also is going to really hold up well in the MAC this year as they did last year. And I think they improved, if anything, coming into this season. Next, we got CUSA, Conference USA, where this is probably one of my hotter takes of this video, but I think that Florida Atlantic is going to win this conference. I think they brought in a really, really great quarterback, wide receiver, head coach combination where the chemistry is already there because they've all worked together before. Zach Kittley has already been the offensive coordinator at Western Kentucky. where he is, kind of been one of the catalysts of that crazy air raid offense that we see every year from them. Speaking of them, that we have Caden Veltkamp and his favorite target, Easton Messer, all coming from Bowling Green, Kentucky to Florida Atlantic University. I think they have a really, really good fan base that is especially after their basketball success, is probably looking at a pretty solid donor class as well. And I think that they are going to just excel at a lot of things next year that I think teams aren't expecting them to, and they might take the CUSA by a little bit of surprise. Next up is the Pac-12, the Pac-2, at least the last year of the Pac-2. And I think this year it's going to be Oregon State. I think that Malik Murphy, Anthony Hankerson backfield is going to be pretty deadly. Malik Murphy, everywhere he's gone, has really elevated the rush game. And I think Anthony Hankerson, already a former 1,000-yard rusher, is going to really, really excel in this offense. Their offensive line is improved from last year. And I think that with the new coaching staff that they are going to really take a step forward into the light of winning their conference. Granted, winning their conference is just winning one game, but I do think that they're going to be better than Washington State this season. Next up, moving into the power conferences, we got the ACC, and I think the Clemson Tigers are going to win the ACC. I think the ACC is more interesting this season than a lot of people are willing to admit. They have not an easy schedule within conference, and I think that's because you have teams like Duke and you have teams like uh, Georgia Tech, and even who knows what UNC is going to look like, right? You have a lot of programs that have a lot of capability and promise and potential. Even teams like Boston College and Florida State, who um, aren't necessarily considered top schools, have a lot of talent on their teams. But I think that this is the season that Dabo Swinney shows us why he's one of the greatest college coaches of all time. He got embarrassed by Georgia week 1 last year, and a lot of people called him washed, including myself early, where I said that maybe his style of not really hitting the transfer portal and really working on only his recruited talent might not be the best method anymore. But I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong this year when he takes the ACC by storm. And it really wouldn't surprise me if he took down LSU in a not overly competitive game week 1. Moving on, we're almost through this. This is moving pretty well right now. I think in the Big 12, this was a tough one because I think there's a lot of really talented teams in the Big 12, but I think that the Texas Tech Red Raiders are going to end up taking the cake here. I think that Texas Tech, since they boasted the second best transfer portal in all of college football, which kind of came out of nowhere, it seems like the donors are really willing to spend money on this team, and they are really willing to allow for this team to be, what they are projected to be. They have a veteran quarterback in Behren Morton, and I think it's just going to come down to the coaching staff and how they are going to handle all this new talent and if they can use that to their advantages. I was really, really close to putting Utah here. I think that Utah, especially with Devon Dampier, is going to be a very, very good team. And I think Devon Dampier could be one of the best quarterbacks in the country this year. I also was really close to putting the defending Big 12 champions, Arizona State, here. I think that Campbell is a great head coach. I'm sorry, not Campbell. I think he's a great head coach. And I think that they are just, Sam Leavitt and company are just a very, very good team. I love their transfer Kanye Udo from Army at running back, and I think that they are going to relatively not miss a beat. I just think that at the end of the day, Texas Tech is just a slightly more talented program, and I think that's really what carries them to a Big 12 victory in a conference where most teams end up beating themselves up pretty bad. Moving on to like the Big Two, the one that the most people care about, the Big Ten. I think this is Penn State's year. I'm going to say this with confidence. Penn State will win the Big Ten, and I think that this is the season that they really take the step into not beating just teams they're significantly better than, but also beating teams that of equal caliber, if not just slightly more impressive rosters. I think James Franklin has been a model of consistency for better or worse. But I do think that this is the season where it all comes together for the Nittany Lions. I think that they're going to beat some teams that they probably have not been able to handle before. And I think that in the playoffs, especially if they can get that first round bye, they should be able to cruise themselves to even a national championship. Finally, last but not least, and how we're going to round out today's episode is the SEC, the Longhorns, the Texas Longhorns. Texas is back. Not really something I thought I would be saying a few months ago, but here we are. And after watching Arch Manning's interview at the SEC Media Day, I really feel like he is just more poised and more mature than a lot of these other quarterbacks. He's had to go through, as far as media coverage, more than some of the better quarterbacks in the country have gone through, their entire career. And I think that he's kind of relishing in it, and he knows what he's supposed to do. And outside of him, right, a lot of quarterback talk, but outside of Arch, you still have players like Michael Taffy and transfer from Stanford, Emmett Mosley at wide receiver, who's really going to help out in every single aspect. And I think this team isn't just new talent based either, because they have a lot of the veteran talent that I really think is going to be able to handle Steve Sarkisian's playbook this year in a way that I think a lot of these younger teams just really struggled with. All right, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. It's a little bit of a shorter episode, but kind of more of an introduction back into doing these weekly, in order, for the season. I will be doing these every single week, going over the CFB A to Z, CFB top 25, every single week, obviously. And, you know, next week we'll be going into some other stuff. So if you like this kind of content, again, make sure you go follow on Twitter, on TikTok at A to Z CFB. And you can also follow along. Right now, we're doing a series where we're going through all 136 FBS programs so that you guys can all be prepared for the 2025 season. That and more college football content. Thank you guys again for watching. Stay tuned for next week and where we go over my 5 preseason Heisman candidates and which teams I actually think have a real shot at making the college football playoff this season. Spoiler alert, I believe I have 18 on that list. All right.